Share via email. Report story. By Oldako 1. Chapter 1. Every Monday, without exception, Midoriya Izuku would wake up at 5 in the morning, shower, and eat breakfast before 5:30, which is when the ingredients would arrive. It was a small sacrifice compared to the quality of the arriving product. These ingredients were the best around, and Izuku's mother had driven a hard bargain for them to be delivered every day. Now that he had taken over, it was his responsibility to receive them early in the morning, or they would end up someplace else, and he would have nothing for the rest of the week unless he paid extra for them to come around again the next day. When they arrived, he would pay the delivery people, telling them to come back again the following week. It was a tough job getting all of the different bags of yeast, flour, sugar, salt, and butter inside, but his mom had been able to do it, so he had to do it as well. He would then bring all of the ingredients together at the appropriate temperature of anywhere between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. He ended up with many large pieces of dough that he would then need to knead. This step, he did it caringly, as if he were touching a child. His mother had always told him to knead the dough gently, as it would increase the quality and taste of the bread. Neither of them knew why, but it seemed to work, so they just kept doing it. After that, he would put the kneaded balls of dough in buttered bowls. He had preferred to use butter instead of oil. He claimed it had better taste that way, but it was actually the overall way he made the bread that had made the taste better. He just did every step caringly, putting 100% of himself into it. Then he placed a plastic sheet over each individual ball of dough and let the dough rise thanks to the yeast. This would take about an hour, so he had time to start making coffee. He'd make it in large amounts, as he thought the people who came early in the morning would appreciate a hot cup before they started their day. His mother hadn't done this. He had started to do this on his own when he first started working there alone, back when his mother fell ill. He would look at the faces of the people coming in early in the morning. Most of them looked like they could use a cup, so he started serving it completely free with every bread purchase. When he was done, the hour had already gone by. He went back to the dough and kneaded it a few more times before letting it rise again. 30 minutes would go by before it was all ready to be put in the oven. He set aside a third or so of the dough so that he could sell it later. He would probably sell it right then if he baked it, but decided to leave some for the people who couldn't go in the morning. He would put the other 2/3 of dough in different groups because they wouldn't fit all at once in the oven. He left every batch there for 15 minutes before it reached its desired color, a golden brown crust that Izuku adored to look at for some reason. He took it out and placed the next batch into the oven, putting the already done bread into baskets on his store's shelves. It was at this time when the store's first customers would be coming in, around 7:30. He would greet them all with a smile and would offer them his recently baked bread, serving a cup of coffee to those who looked that they needed it. His bread would be completely sold out in the next 3 hours, and he often had customers waiting for the next batch to be ready and able to be sold. During this time, Izuku would chat with whoever was there, drinking a cup of coffee with them or simply talking about life. It was because of this experience that his bakery was the most popular around, and people loved the bread as much as the owner. The way Izuku made it gave it an amazing taste. When he was asked about how he made the bread, how it turned out to be so good, he would simply reply, "I do it just how my mom taught me to." Most of the older customers had known Izuku's mother. Most of them had thought that the bakery would close after what had happened to her. But her son, who was 16 at the time, refused to let the place close, so he took it upon itself to continue its service. When Izuku had first taken over, it was a little bit shaky. The boy would stutter when talking to customers and would sometimes burn the bread because of his inexperience. He was forced to not apply for a high school, but he didn't care. He had to keep the place alive, no matter what it took. And now, 3 years later, he still had it going. Promoted stories. You'll also like Hurt 'Cause I Love You to Death Izuocha. Ha. 8.6K 141 Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer as I am, sequel of, You Are check mark 69.4K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of, You Are, so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Mirko X Shy Male Reader 167K 1.1 Key. Don't own MHA. I hope you enjoy the story I made. Convicted Hearts 3480 like my other story but ILI longer. Zero Deku Onishots 31.3K 791 because of circumstances, this book won't be continued unfortunately. Feel free to check out my other stuff. Thank you for understanding. The Kings and Queen Yandere Wakfu X Reader 56.1K 1.8 Kyonder. Wakfu X Reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. The place itself was nothing fancy. It was a small store on the first floor of Izuku's two-floored house. It had multiple shelves in which the bread was displayed, even if they were empty for most of the day. To the far wall opposite to the entrance, rested Izuku's seat along the register, where people would pay for the bread, and in the middle, there was a table and a couple of chairs where his customers would sit as they waited. The second floor of the house wasn't anything fancy as well. It consisted of Izuku's bedroom, a bathroom, a small living room, and a guest room that he rarely used. After a while, at around 1 in the afternoon, the store would have no bread left and customers would stop coming in, so Izuku would close and go out on a run, followed by some training at a park close by, where there were some public workout spots. He would do this for 2 or 3 hours every day, depending on how tired he was. He would then go back home and tend to the store, counting the money made in the day and looking out for anyone coming in. He would make the rest of the bread. It wasn't as much as he made in the morning, but it was for the people coming back home or who had simply missed the bread made earlier. This bread sold much more slowly, his last pieces being sold at around 8 in the afternoon, where Izuku would close shop until the next day. He fell asleep at around 10, sleeping soundly until it was time to get up again, this time a little later since there were no ingredients to be received. He also took weekends off but made as much bread as he possibly could on Friday, just so his customers had more for the weekend. It was a regular Thursday then. Izuku had just sold the last portion of bread in the morning and was closing the shop earlier than usual so he could go for a run. Wait, he heard a voice call. He looked at the source and saw a girl with brown hair desperately running towards him, stopping a few feet before him. Are you closed? She said between breaths, slightly disappointed. I'm afraid so, miss, but come back in a few hours. I'll bake more bread in the afternoon. He smiled at her but felt guilty that he had closed right as she came running. Dang it, she said. Some friends recommended this place but told me that it all sold out quickly, and I just wanted to buy some before work. Sorry about that, Izuku said, bowing his head in apology, but come back after work. I'll definitely have some for you. Really? Ochako exclaimed, looking up at Izuku. That'd be great. I promise. Izuku smiled. Do you want a cup of coffee before you leave? I think I still have some. I'd love to. The girl smiled at him, making his cheeks turn slightly red. They went inside and the girl sat down in a chair by the table, looking around the store with curiosity. Izuku went to the kitchen and came back out with a cup of coffee for his guest. It's a nice place, she complimented. Thanks, he responded happily. My mom got it when my father left, and she opened up the shop. She wanted to ask but stopped herself before she did so. It would be rude of her to pry into his business. Are you the owner? She asked, surprised at how young he looked. She could bet he was about as old as she was. My mom used to be, he explained. She swore she saw his smile fade a little, but then something happened right before I entered high school, and I've been the owner for 3 years now. She juggled the numbers in her head and discovered that he was, in fact, as old as she was, 19. Oh, sorry, where are my manners? He suddenly said. My name is Midoriya Izuku. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Uraraka Ochako. The pleasure is mine. She responded as they shook hands. What do you do for a living? If you don't mind me asking, of course. Not at all. She waved her hand in front of her, in a dismissing gesture. I'm a sidekick at a hero office nearby. Izuku's mouth grew wide. Even if he was older, he still admired heroes and subconsciously, still wanted to be one. She noticed his surprise and asked, is there something wrong? And nothing. He quickly responded, I just think it's really cool. She smiled at the comment. It sounded like he really liked heroes at one point. I wanted to be one when I was a kid, but he struggled to find the words for what he wanted to say. Ochako looked at him, puzzled. My doctor told me I was quirkless, and I still wanted to be a hero, but then the person I admired the most told me I couldn't be one. So the truth hit me, and I've worked here ever since my mom stopped, so I didn't even get a chance to try the hero program at any high school. His sudden revelation shocked her. She hadn't seen it coming at all. She wanted to say something to the poor boy, but couldn't find anything to say. Izuku noticed her change and quickly smiled again. It's fine. I love this job more than you think. He scratched the back of his head, embarrassed that he had revealed that much about himself. She was about to say something when her phone started ringing. 13. Her boss had texted her, telling her to go back immediately, as he needed her help. I'm sorry, I have to go. I'll definitely come by later. She waved as she got up, leaving the store. Izuku stood by the door for a full minute, then went out and continued his routine. It was getting late, it was almost closing time, but he refused to close. He would wait for her and give her the bread she wanted. He didn't know why, but he felt like he needed to. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of someone knocking on the door. Come in, he said as he got up from his chair, walking over to the door. The door opened and Ochako stood there. She had a pink jacket on and a black top underneath. Hey, she said. Thank God you're not closed. He smiled as he stepped aside to let her in. I knew you would come, and I thought you'd be disappointed if you had to wait another day. Ochako came in and Izuku walked over to the kitchen. Make yourself comfortable, he said as he went into the adjacent room and started to bake the bread. I wanted to bake it now so that it'd be warm. Can you wait 15 minutes? Sure, she responded, sitting down in a nearby chair. As she sat down, she realized just how exhausted she was. She had overworked herself today again. 13 actually gave her the day off tomorrow, suggesting that she went to sleep as soon as she went home. But she couldn't do that. She wanted to drop by. The nice smell coming from the kitchen filled with the warmth from the store made Ochako fall asleep before she knew it. The 15 minutes went by and Izuku went back into the store with a brown paper bag in his hands. Inside it was the bread he had set aside earlier. He was surprised when he saw Ochako completely asleep in her chair, but her chair was slowly rising from the ground. He panicked for a moment before grabbing one of the chair's legs and setting it back down into the ground. It only started to rise up again, no matter what Izuku tried. Hey, you alright? He shook Ochako awake, startling her for a bit. Where am I? She asked, not fully aware. You fell asleep and soon after, my chair was floating in the air. Ooh, she said, realizing how close Izuku was to her. He had both his arms holding on to the chair support, and was leaning over it to weigh it down even more. Sorry about that. She quickly got up. A small blush formed on her cheeks. She pressed both of her hands together before saying, release. Which made the chair weigh something again. Izuku clapped in admiration and then proceeded to give her the bag. Here, just baked, he said, proud of his own work. Thanks. She reached for it and took it. How much do I owe you? Don't worry about that, he said. It's on the house this time. A huge smile grew on her face as he told her this. Really? Thank you so much. It's nothing, he said, waving his hand in a dismissive gesture. Now, you look really tired. You should go back home and rest. Okay. She smiled at him. Thank you. She walked out and left. Izuku looked at her while she did, and continued looking outside long after she was out of sight. Dash 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 dot. Ochako opened the bag. It smelled delicious. Not being able to control herself, she took out a piece and tasted it. It's so good, she said with her mouth full as she reached her apartment. And that had sealed it. She was determined to go back for more. Izuku went past his guest room but stopped at the entrance. He opened the door and said softly, "Good night, Mom." He did it every night but never had he heard an answer. He went to his room and got inside the bed, looking at his clock before turning the light off. 2:07 a.m. It read. Tomorrow's gonna be a hard morning, he thought before drifting to sleep. Chapter 2. Ochako's days were very different from Izuku's. Firstly, she would set her alarm to 8:30. 13 would want her to be at the office by 11:30, which gave her plenty of time to wake up and do her morning chores before having to go to work. She liked to already be warmed up and ready for anything when she arrived at her job, so she would usually go for a long run in the morning, right after she woke up. As she ran, she looked at the city around her, amazed by its calmness at that hour. She would run until she felt properly warmed up, followed by some stretches on a nearby park. She would usually get back to her apartment by 10, which was followed by a quick shower. She would then have breakfast and get dressed before heading outside to her office. The walk to the office was a short one. As she lived only a few minutes away, there was no need to be in a hurry. That's why she always left her apartment with plenty of time to spare, just in case anything demanded her attention on the way there. When she arrived at the office, she would have to get into her hero costume. She had designed it herself and loved every detail about it. It was specially designed so that she would avoid feeling sick after using her quirk too much or, at least, minimize nausea. The workday was usually nothing but patrols and being on alert in case anything happened. Since 13's office specialized on rescue, they wouldn't get as many calls as other superheroes, but they would still have to go somewhere once or twice a day. She had grown to love rescuing others. The joy that came out of seeing a family reunited oftentimes filled her eyes with tears. She would quickly wipe them off before heading back in to rescue someone else. Her head could not be clouded while doing these operations, after all. Patrols were different. She would walk around with someone else from the agency and look around for anything suspicious happening. It was usually pretty calm in that neighborhood, but she couldn't be too careful. She would usually work until 7 in the afternoon unless there was an urgent situation she would need to go to. It was the one day she wanted to get out of work early that she was called back in for an urgent situation. Gravity. There was an attack next to the docks and the sea patrols need us to help them rescue survivors. 13 had called her just as she was ready to leave. She sighed. She had wanted to go back to the bakery she had visited earlier. She was curious about the owner. He seemed really kind, hardworking and cute. She surprised herself with that last word, her cheeks turning slightly pink at the thought of his face. She was surprised she would use that word. She rarely looked at other guys that way, if ever. She was too busy with her hero work, trying to make money to take her parents to Hawaii. But there was no use denying it. He was indeed cute. His smile was as warm as a summer day, and he had this childish look to him that Ochako couldn't fully understand. It was as if he had matured multiple years in a short span of time, but his old habits hadn't died. She shrugged it off. She would try to ask him about it later. She arrived at the scene. Next to the docks there had been a shipwreck. It wasn't something terrible, but it was clear that help was needed, as the few heroes on duty couldn't get that many people out and there were clearly not enough rafts for everyone to escape in. Ochako started helping out in any way she could along with 13. She got on a raft and started lifting survivors that had fallen in the water with her quirk. After this was done, she started moving rocks or other debris that were next to the ship, trying to open different ways for other heroes to get in and help. As she did, she saw a similar figure going through the water, helping survivors with her long tongue, bringing them to safety. She smiled when she saw her. They had graduated recently, but almost everyone in the old Class A of UA kept in touch, hanging out frequently. The only people who didn't were Bakugo and Mineta. Both of them just brought negativity to the group, and were no help whatsoever. Froppy. She waved, saying hi to her friend. Gravity. She exclaimed as she jumped out of the water, waving at her before diving back inside and continuing to help out survivors. It was slow, grueling work, but after some hours, they had saved everybody and there were no reported casualties. Ochako sat down on the floor as soon as she could. She was feeling very tired. She had probably overworked herself again, but she didn't mind as there were multiple families thanking her, to which she responded. Don't worry about it. It's my duty as a hero. Before giving them a smile. That was all the recognition she needed. She didn't need all the news interviews and everything of the sort. She preferred the genuine thanks coming from the people she had saved. Phew, a familiar voice said as she sat down beside her. That was tough, Ribbit. Yeah, it was, Ochako said to her friend, exhausted. Suyu looked back at her and smiled. I haven't seen you lift that much in a while. You clearly went over your limit, but you're fine. How? Ribbit. I don't really know. I've just been really motivated since this morning. Her cheeks turning slightly red as the boy she had met. Did you meet someone? Ribbit. Suyu looked at her friend's guilty face. She had pressed just the right button. And no. What are you talking about? Ochako responded defensively. He must be really cute, Ribbit. She laughed a little bit at her friend's face, who was burning up. Ochako let out a nervous laugh before suddenly remembering what she had promised earlier. Oh no. The bakery. She panicked. before running at full speed towards her office, waving to Suyu as she left. Dash 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 dot. Izuku woke up early again. His head hurt a little due to the lack of sleep. He slowly got up. It didn't matter how he felt. He had to complete his job. He had to keep the place running, no matter what. He had made a promise to himself. If he didn't work his hardest every day, then Mom would be mad and he didn't want that to happen at all. He took an aspirin, which had basically no effect on him, but it eased his head a little bit, leaving him able to work on the bread. After a quick breakfast and shower, both of which made him use more effort than he had expected, he went downstairs to the kitchen and got started with the whole process again. His head started to hurt even more as he went on. The aspirin's numbing effect had only lasted a couple of minutes, leaving him weaker now. He was careful not to let his head distract him and continued with his usual effort and care in his movements. As Izuku kneaded the dough again, just before putting it in the oven, he started to feel worse, but he still went on, determined to finish kneading the several groups of dough and put them in the oven. When he finally did, he wiped the sweat off of his brow, letting out a long breath, and didn't realize the floor was rapidly moving towards his face until it struck. Dash 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 dot. Ochako woke up a little earlier than usual. Her sleep had been a deep, refreshing one, and she was fully rested, even if she had only slept a few hours. The encounter from yesterday had left her in a great mood, and the bread even more, so she got up and went to eat breakfast. As she was preparing herself a slice of bread, she remembered she had gotten it for free. She felt guilty over this. Why had he just given it to her? Was it because she was too tired? She didn't know the answer. All she knew was that she needed to repay it somehow, no matter what she had to do. Determined, and after a quick shower, she went outside and headed for the bakery, admiring how quiet the city was this early. She always woke up later, so she had close to no idea of the sudden change that just an hour would make. She didn't exactly know what she was going to do for Izuku, but she would come up with something, of that, there was no doubt. She arrived a bit later. Her apartment was a few blocks away from the bakery. She had no idea how she'd never seen it since it was so popular and all. It was almost 8, but not quite. The store's door was open regardless, probably setting up for his first customers. She thought as she reached the entrance. She peeked inside, but saw no one. A delicious smell caught her attention. It was coming from inside the kitchen. She went inside the store and headed for the adjacent room, curiosity taking over her. She found Izuku laying on the ground, almost unconscious. Are you okay? She asked worriedly as she knelt beside him. Gotta bake it, he said, clearly not paying attention. Hey, come on, she said to him, hoping to catch his attention. Why don't you take the day off? You're clearly in no shape to work right now. He waved his hand in a dismissive gesture, then tried to get up, but his hand gave away and he fell back down. He started to sit up again, not giving up. Here, Ochako moved closer to Izuku, who was sitting up and wrapped his arm around her neck, supporting him as she got him up. Look, I'll take care of things over here, so don't worry, she said with determination, but smiling at him. Let's say this is to repay the bread you gave me yesterday. Izuku looked at her in disbelief, tears almost coming out of his eyes. In all of his life, no one had been this kind to him. The only person who had been his mother. Ochako looked at him, worried, puzzled as to why his eyes started watering all of a sudden. She brought him upstairs with the help of her quirk, before setting him down on the only couch in the living room. Where do you have a blanket? She asked. He only managed to point in the direction of the guest room, too tired to say anything. She went inside and noticed the only piece of furniture aside from the bed in the room. It was a tall shelf and had 4 drawers underneath it. She started searching among those, noticing the multiple pictures that the room had hanging on its walls as she did. These showed exclusively two people, a kid version of Izuku along a small, slightly chubby woman. She guessed the latter was Izuku's mother that he had mentioned yesterday, but there were no signs of her around at the moment, or for the past few years at that. Dust was settling on some of the pictures. She deduced that the room wasn't used at all. She finally found a blanket and took it out of the drawer. As she headed back to the living room, she noticed a picture frame on the queen-sized bed. This time it was just the woman. Flower petals surrounded it. They were withered. They had probably been there for a long time. She didn't have time to ponder what she had seen. Izuku needed her immediate attention. She went over to him and put the blanket over him. He was almost unconscious, but still managed to get some words out. Please, the dough downstairs. He struggled, trying his hardest to speak. You have to put it in the oven for 15 minutes, or else. Or else mom will get mad at me again. He fell asleep not long after, his hand reaching out for Ochako. She smiled at him. She went to the bathroom and dipped a towel in cold water, placing it on his forehead before going downstairs. She did exactly as she was told. She marveled at how soft the dough felt. It was clear that Izuku tried his hardest to make the best bread that he could, and it was her responsibility now, so she would try to match his efforts if she could. She wouldn't let him down. Thankfully, she only needed to put the dough in the oven. All of the pieces were organized neatly, so she guessed that she had to put those exact groups in the oven one by one. Once the first batch was done, she got it out of the oven and placed it on one of the nearby baskets that Izuku had left for when the bread was done. She put the next group in the oven before putting the bread in one of the shelves of the store. Soon after, customers started wandering in. Ochako was stuck in a loop that involved serving coffee, selling bread, chatting to customers, and baking more bread. It was a couple of hours before she was about to bake another group, but noticed a paper that said, for the afternoon. She smiled as she read it. She felt happy that she could help Izuku and slightly amused that he had left notes like this to himself. When the morning bread had run out, customers left the store and left the once full house floor now empty with no one but Ochako inside it. She was surprised at just how popular Izuku's bakery actually was. She had sold absolutely everything, and she had collected a hefty profit from it. The bread wasn't pricey, it was quite cheap actually, but it sold so well and it was so good that the customers often left tips as thanks. She closed the store's main entrance and went upstairs to check on Izuku. He looked horrible. He was pale and all of his breaths sounded wet, as something was stuck in his throat and his nose was blocked. She refreshed the towel and sat beside him, worry coming over her as she looked at the poor boy. You feeling okay? She asked. Want me to make you something? How was? He took a deep breath. Talking had used up more energy than he originally thought. How was the bread? Great. Everyone said they loved it, and when they asked for you, I just told them you were making the bread extra good for them. She smiled brightly at him. Good. He smiled back, weakly. Thank you, Uraraka. Thank you so much. It was nothing. I quite enjoyed it. It was really fun. Great. He felt relieved, as if a huge weight was lifted from his shoulders. You can go now. You've done more than enough. Leave. No. She protested. Look at you. You're barely in any shape to do anything. He smiled again at her and slowly started falling asleep. Thank you, Uraraka, he said before losing consciousness. She got up and went back down to the kitchen. She wanted to continue to care for him. She didn't exactly know why, but she just looked at him in that state. He looked so vulnerable, so weak. She decided to stay at his side until he at least felt better. She used whatever was at hand to prepare a soup for him. She wanted to surprise him by the time he woke up. Plus, he hadn't eaten since she arrived, so he was probably hungry. She took the soup up in a tray for him. She set it down on the small coffee table in front of the couch before gently shaking Izuku awake. Hey, I made you something, she said softly to him as he came to Izuku sat up slowly, wrapping the blanket around his shoulders. He looked at the tray and smiled softly. He was once again amazed by the kindness this girl had shown him. He had only received this from one other person, but she had stopped a long time ago. A tear slowly fell off from his eye. He quickly wiped it away, but Ochako noticed. She sat down beside him on the couch and wrapped an arm around his shoulder. You okay? She asked him as she looked at him. Why, yeah, he said, trying not to let another tear leave his eye, but his eyes were already watering. It's just that no one has ever been this kind to me. The only other person who was is no longer here. He felt numb. He started to remember all those painful memories. There they were, flooding his mind again. He had to let them out, but he didn't want to burden this girl with such a story. It's okay, Midoriya. She told him softly. You don't have to say anything. Just eat for now, then rest. He looked at her and smiled, thankful. He helped himself to the soup Ochako had made. It was absolutely delicious. It made him feel better in several ways. When he finally finished it, he lay back down on the couch and started falling asleep again. A small smile spread across his face. For the next couple of hours, Ochako was busy with baking and tending to the store again. The bread sold out even quicker now. It was a Friday. After all, as soon as the last piece had been sold, she closed up the store again and went upstairs to take care of Izuku. She sat down on the couch next to his sleeping face. She noticed he didn't have a pillow, so she quickly got up and went over to the guest room, which she took another blanket out of. She wrapped this one around herself and then sat back down next to Izuku. Head. She put one hand under it and lifted it gently, placing it on her lap. She didn't know what had made her do that. She honestly thought that Izuku looked uncomfortable without a pillow, or at least, that's what she told herself. It wasn't long before she drifted into sleep herself. Where stories live. Discover now.